About a year ago, I did a video on a dumbphone, the Nokia 235, that I was getting for my eldest child, who was 11 at the time, and was approaching the point where some of their friends were starting to get smartphones, and we had made the decision not to do a smartphone for them. And I went through why it was that we were going through Nokia, which the upshot of which is, one, there's quite a lot of evidence right now around the wiring, not the rewiring, but just the wiring of childhood and how it is that children are approaching technology and the opportunity costs that are lost in feeding into the tech trends and enshittification of apps that draw all of our attention away from doing other activities. When they started the secondary school here in the UK, which happens when they're around 11, naturally the first day they came back and said all of their friends had smartphones, but as parents in a WhatsApp group with all of the other parents within that, they did a bit of a poll because every child was saying that, and it turned out about a quarter of them had smartphones at that time. Many of them didn't have any phones, and then some of them had dumb phones. So we felt that we were very much in with everybody else, and recognizing that not all tech is bad, we weren't approaching this from the angle of just no technology, no screens or anything. They still had access to an iPad at home as well as a computer, and we've been working on screen time with them. And for the last year, it's been all right, but there's been some key things that have come up with using the Nokia that we've been addressing. And we've seen that there's been a number of different developments, notably with new technology that's been coming out. And particularly looking at something that's now available that wasn't before, which is what I'm calling at least a competent phone. So you've got dumb phones that don't do anything like the Nokia, and you have smartphones which do everything. But you've got now some things that are sitting in the middle, which allow you to have some apps that are in forked Android systems effectively, which means that you've got some common apps that can be used, but you can control it without necessarily having access to the whole Play Store or App Store, depending on what system you're using. The key things that my child was complaining about was, one, they hated T9. I grew up with T9 for a bit, but text messaging wasn't as big of a thing, and especially when their friends had potentially smartphones on them, they would send them long messages and lots of them, whereas there was lots of friction. So even just responding, it would be one or two words that might come through, and they just kind of hated that. That could be viewed as a benefit or not, but I think for a kid that can be quite frustrating when they're just trying to get a message across of just where they are or what time they're going to be home. Another weird thing with Nokia is that there were data limits on it in terms of how much you could actually store in text messages. So he got to the point where it wasn't storing any new text messages because he had reached the limit. And it wasn't like there were that many. He's had it for a year now, but it would still say that there were too many text messages and it wouldn't store them. Even though we had an SD card in there and everything, it wouldn't do it anymore, which is just weird. We've also started to encounter some issues of text messages not landing. And this has to do with, we understand it to be some of the rollouts of RCS texting, which is now common both for iPhones as well as for Android. And if people were sending RCS or even SMS to them, they were still having like very long delays. And I saw it where I would even be sitting next to him. We're both on the same mobile network. And I could text him, and it would take 2 hours for him to get the text. He would send it back. Whatever he sends to me would always land, but things that were actually landing on his phone would take a while. There was also no ability to actually write notes. And I don't remember walking around with a notepad or this being a big thing when I was a kid, but my son at least, he would create a new contact to create a note and put like whatever he was trying to capture in the first name and surname for it, just so that he'd be able to remind himself about something when he got home. So this new tech in the middle has now kind of surfaced a bit. There were two things which are all part of, for adults at least, the minimalist kind of tech approach, which is for people who go for detoxes. And there's not much, I think, that's talking about this just from a parental perspective for what goes to kids. There were two phones that I was interested in that were announced last year that are now in the market, one of which was the Light Phone 3, and the other one is the one that I'll be talking about today, which is the Mudita Kompakt. And I had actually pre-ordered both of them, and they effectively were the same price at the time, even though the Light Phone's gone up quite a lot. I've actually canceled my Light Phone one because it became clear that it was just an Android phone at its heart, and you could actually replace the operating system quite easily, and it was an OLED display, and you can do all sorts of funky stuff with it without actually spending that much time to kind of get underneath the hood of it. Whereas with an e-ink display, as what's available on the Mudita, even if you were to do something like that, you're still dealing with an e-ink display, which creates quite a lot of friction. So you can't actually change that much with it. So this is the phone. I went ahead and got a green case, which is for the inevitable drops that will occur. The lock screen can either have a passcode or you can use a fingerprint scanner for going into it, and there's a slight light that goes on. Your basic screen here isn't really changeable by default, and you've got some basic functions that you might be used to on a smartphone, such as the back button, your home button, which will take you right back to the screen, or your settings. And the settings are useful because it gives you the weather up top, and you can easily adjust the volume either using your fingers on the screen, or just by using the button in the top right corner over here to do it on any particular screen. Your torch is actually kind of neat in that you can have a cool or a warm light on it just by looking at the two different colors. So there's your kind of cool light, or you change it to your warm light if you were to grab it at night. And then you've got your settings button that would be down there too, and you've got a hotspot in case that's of interest. So because it's e-ink, it will work in daylight, and this kind of soft light that you have around it would be for seeing at night. Inside, clicking on your apps, these are the basic apps that come with it. Your calculator is what it says on the tin, and it works pretty quickly for an e-ink display in that you don't have too much of a lag on a system like this, whereas typically if you were on a Kindle or something, you would see quite a lot between every finger press that's going through. So they've done some good work on the refresh rate. It does have a calendar, but it doesn't synchronize with anything. So how useful that's going to be, don't know. But you can take any of those apps off the screen as you'd like. The camera on it has this 3-second delay. So whilst it's on, and you can see here just the refresh rate of why it is that I say that this has a high friction device for it, is that if you click it, it's taking that long before it says photo saved. So you very much want to have everybody say cheese for quite a long time. And whilst it does look, grainy and everything in your actual gallery here, if you send the pictures, they'll look normal. And I had put my son's SIM card in, and apparently in the Nokia it saved some of the pictures that he had taken with his other camera on here as well. Now, in terms of the other apps that are there, the chess app is kind of basic, and I think it's quite good. Actually, you just play against yourself, but as far as kind of a minimal smartphone kind of game goes, that works. The maps aren't anything to write home about. You can find things that needs GPS, but it doesn't do any type of sat navigation. So it's more just for looking up where you are, perhaps. But even right now, it'll say that GPS is unavailable because I'm inside. So you do need to be outside for that sort of thing to be working. Meditation, I don't think he'll do that. Notes is something that, as I said, was one of the reasons why moving to another type of phone was desirable, as is weather, because my kids actually constantly check the weather whenever they leave the house, and this gives them a nice view of all of that information on their phone, which seems like not an unusual ask this day and age. Now, going to the right is where you can see where I've sideloaded some apps, and these are the ones that I thought would be appropriate for my kids. So Signal works, and that's fine, and I downloaded the APK for that directly from the Signal website. The other ones I installed using the Aurora store, and I'll put a link to another YouTuber that has recorded how to do all of this, which is all really simple, and they're only like 2 or 3 minute videos, so you can do it. The only exception to that is the BBC Sounds app. Now, this is fine for me as a somebody living in the UK, but the issue with the Aurora store is that the locality for it assumes that you're in America when you download it, and you have to spoof it which in my case was actually just putting it into the UK where I live. But the UK wasn't one of the areas that you could do it because it bases it on language. So I had to say that I was Welsh. Or speaking Gaelic, and then so it would recognize that I was in the UK, and then it showed me the BBC Sounds app that I could download. And this is nice because you'd have some podcasts that can go on it, or you can have kind of the live radio. So you can see again the friction of this is it's not like a great scrolling device, but if you did want to do it, listen to it. Before we get started, just a reminder that it works, and that's kind of the main point. And I created a child account through the BBC for it. You can put Spotify on this. However, Spotify has no controls for parents around the access to podcasts. The only thing you can do is limit explicit music, and podcasts and videos is where you get into some really dodgy territory on Spotify, and there is zero control of just limiting access that your child could potentially have to that. So we don't have Spotify, and it's a shame that none of the other music apps really work on this because they rely on Google services, which isn't included in the app. But BBC Sounds works. Duolingo, my kids are very much into Duolingo. This works as well. And similarly, if you're curious about how the New York Times apps work, it's fine. The main thing that's a bit challenging is going to be one, you can have a bit of ghosting that occurs. That doesn't really go away. But if you were going to be just looking at doing things like Wordle, Wordle loads up just fine. Any app that has any particular animations will be a bit funny. And you can see here on your OLED screen, you might have this as kind of a black or textured one, and you can see that in here as well. So if we were, just to play, it's fine. But as you get some of the different letters kind of clarified, that's not super helpful around this because you don't know which, you have to work out that one of them is a lighter color and one of them is going to be so one's green and one's yellow, but you're not quite sure just by looking at that. So some other types of games might be a bit better. But going back, it's fine. It works. It does everything that I think we would be interested in for it. Any of the native apps, so like the native Note app, is going to be a lot easier for getting in, and you do have the autocomplete. So the speed of it isn't necessarily any better, nor is I guess it's more predictive text than autocorrect around that. But it's on there, and you've got bits that can do, and it just is slow, but much faster than if you were doing T9. So if we put much faster than T9. But you can see there, it's because you have that delay, you've got more things that you need to click back to be able to correct and add in these various things. However, you do get the benefit of emojis, which is not possible on the Nokia as well. So that's just a bit of a walkthrough of the device itself and how it is that I set it up for my kid at least. So with this, it's eink. Some apps are on it, but Signal, Notion, the New York Times Games app, just so that there's something that they can do on it besides chess, which comes with it by default. And you can sideload those yourself if you spend a little bit of time understanding kind of how to connect it to a computer, and you have to deal with terminal just to kind of get your kind of app store on, which you can then take off as well. So it's been good so far. He'll be getting it momentarily on this, so we'll see how it ends with him. He was quite excited just for some of the improvements around that he can be on Signal with the rest of the family and communicate with us all at once, as well as having a better camera to record pictures, even though the camera's a bit weird because you have like a 3-second delay between when you press the button and it actually takes the picture. So just some simple improvements that I would be looking for, I think, on this, and which are really low-hanging fruit, which are disappointing not to already be seen on this. One of which is that the notifications for calls and texts is silly right now because the sound for them is combined. You can either have audible alerts for both calls and texts or nothing. Why that's not split out boggles the mind, and especially with my kid who learned within the first couple of days he didn't want audible notifications whenever a text message came through, especially if it was going to be that rapid communication with friends. It's important to split them out. So why they didn't do it already, don't know. It seems like a fairly simple fix for them to do. The second one is that the lock screen is silly. It's just their branding. And that seems odd with a company that's trying to push minimalism kind of out the door. So why they would make their brand the only thing that you see on it and not be able to just have a clock, which would reduce people from having to turn it on every time that they pick it up. Not sure. The final one around this is just around Android. Which is, it is an Android base and it's Android 12, which was actually stopped getting support from Google before they even launched the phone. So I can understand that it takes a long time to do software development, but there needs to be something around a commitment to security patches for this. And you absolutely wouldn't be putting anything around banking apps or things, even email accounts. You wouldn't want to put one of those on here either, because it's just about how confident you are that your device, even if you think that it's just going to a kid and it's quite innocent, they will have pictures on it. You don't know if people are going to be able to crack into it or exploit it in some way. So having some basic support for just the security for the program that they chose to do. It is not new information to say that using an old version of Android or using Android at all doesn't require you to do security updates for a long time. And even Google and Samsung have made commitments for 7 years of security updates and operating system updates. This is a small team at Mudita. I'm sure that they can't commit to an operating system update, but they do need to commit to, I think, doing security updates if this is all going to fly. So that's just a run through of our observations from working with the phone. It's good. I think it ticks all the boxes for what a kid would need, certainly would want. Probably it's want more than need in that respect. But it does the job, and it will delay even further kind of the itch to get a smartphone.